Grief is a hard thing, and I imagine all of us have experienced grief in one way or another, whether it's losing someone or losing a dream or a diagnosis. It's hard, and walking through that is hard, and it takes time, and everybody deals with grief in a different way. Some people need to talk it out and they just need someone to listen. Some people, they cry a lot. Some people don't cry a lot. And I think, we've been talking about how to deal with grief if you're the griever, but I think also it's important for us to learn how to grieve if you're not the griever. How do we support our friends who are grieving? I know I hope this doesn't offend people who've lost a person, but for me, I can relate to grief because I had a breakup a few years ago that I thought for sure, I still think actually, that he is the one. And when we broke up, I was blindsided. I just didn't know what to do. And I was so heartbroken that I remember those first couple weeks I would go to work and you're constantly on the verge of tears, if you've ever been through grief, any little thing will just spill you over and you're crying in front of strangers. And I would come home and I would go for a walk, and I didn't even walk. I called it plodding. I was just plodding to get my steps in. And I'd come home and eat, and I'd be like, all right, it's 5 o'clock. I have to be awake for 4 more hours. What am I going to do? Because all I want to think about is how sad I am right now. And it was awful. And I remember in that time, I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to come home from work and go to bed and sleep and wake up when it was all over. I didn't reach out to anybody, to hang out with anybody. I learned to hate the question, how are you? Because when you're really grieving, that question stinks. Because how do you answer it? Are you honest? Do you honestly say, I'm terrible. I can't do it. I want to cry right now. I feel like there's no hope in my life. I am struggling. I am miserable. Or do you act like the typical American and put a smile on your face and say, I'm fine? And that's tough. And that's a hard question to ask because I always felt like I was lying to people. And you know how it is. People ask you that question all the time when you see somebody. Their first question is, hey, how's it going? And you have this wrestling match in your head of am I honest with you? Do I know you well enough to tell you the truth? Or do I just lie and say it's fine? And that's hard. And so as I think about how do we get through grief? How do we help people through the grief? I look at the Bible and I'm like, where in the Bible does it talk about grief and how to help people with grief? So I thought, okay, where in the Bible did Jesus help somebody grieve? And I couldn't really, other than Lazarus, and he raised Lazarus from the dead, but not all of us have Jesus to raise our situation to life. So then I thought of the other quintessential grief story in the Bible, and that's the book of Job. And in the book of Job is in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. It's one of 3 books that are called the wisdom books because I think you have to be very wise to understand them because they're very filled with symbolism and deep meaning, and they're kind of hard to understand. But the book of Job at least is a story. And so the story starts out here. It says, in the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. He was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons, 3 daughters, and they had 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yokes of oxen, 500 donkeys, and a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. And so here's this Job, and everything is going great for Job. Life is awesome. He's got a big family. He's got lots of money. Everything is going his way. He's like Midas. Everything he touches turns to gold. And so Satan comes up to hang out with God. And God's like, what you up to, Satan? And he's like, I'm just wandering around. And he's like, okay. And God's like, they get to talking. And Satan's like, people only like you because you're good to them. And God's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, look, I've got Job here. Job is awesome. He's like this good person. There's no one on earth like him. He's blameless and upright. He fears God and he shuns evil. And Satan's like, well, of course he does. He's like, does Job fear God for nothing? He's like, you've put a hedge around him, his household, and everything he has. Haven't you blessed the work of his hands so his flocks and his herds are spread throughout the land? But now, stretch out your hand, strike down everything he has, and surely he will curse you to your face. And the Lord's like, so it's basically like a dare. Satan's kind of like, of course he likes you. You give him everything. He's a spoiled brat. Of course he is. He's the fair child. Like he's your favorite son. Of course he likes you. You give him everything he wants. And God's like, I'm going to prove that Job is still good. Go ahead. Take away everything. Just don't kill him. He says, very well, everything he has in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger. So Satan does. Satan comes and kills all of his family, kills all of his herds, basically like burns his house down, afflicts him with sores, like takes away every physical thing that Job has and makes him covered with sores. And Job is justifiably very grieved by this because he's just lost everything. And so then we see Job's friends. So Job has these three friends. Eliphaz, who's a Temanite, Bildad, who's a Shuhite, and Zophar, who's a Naamathite. And they hear about Job's trouble, so they come and they set out from their homes, and they meet by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they see him from a distance, they weep aloud, they tear their robes, they sprinkle dust on their heads, and then they sit on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. And no one says a word, because they see how great his suffering is. They see that Job is in the pit. He has had everything taken away. He's really sad. And so they, seeming to be good friends, come and just sit with him. They don't try to solve his problems. They just sit with him so he doesn't have to suffer alone. And I think, like, these are good friends who come and just sit with you. It is a good friend who comes and just is there so that you can cry and they're not judging you. When I had to put my dog down, my friend Jody, God love her, I walked my dog to the vet that day because he loved to walk. And she drove basically behind me in case he couldn't make it. She brought me a wagon so I could put him in the wagon. And she met me afterwards and she just sat with me while I was sad and crying. And she knew she could make it better. She just sat with me. Like that's what a good friend does. When you're sad, they just sit with you. So that is one tangible way. Now, these friends, you think they're awesome, but then they turn out to not be so awesome. Now, this woman, I'll get to his friends because they're going to mess up. There's this woman who talks a lot about what it means to be empathetic and sympathetic. Her name is Brené Brown. If you've never heard of Brené Brown, she's awesome. She is so wise. She is so smart. She did this whole big TED Talk about empathy. And this little clip of that TED Talk is quite famous. I've seen it in multiple of my trainings, actually. It's a great thing. She explains what empathy is versus sympathy. So I'm going to show you this little clip here. I like that verb, she says, silver lining it. You know, people don't like ugly feelings. They don't like those uncomfortable feelings. And so in order to sort of make themselves feel better, they try to make you feel better by silver lining things. And that doesn't work. I don't need a silver lining right now. I'm hurting. And I love that she says it very plainly. I don't need to solve your problem. I mean, unless your problem is something I can solve, like if you're poor and I have money, like, okay, great, solve the problem. But like for the most part, you can't solve their problem. But you can at least sit with them so they don't feel alone in it. Just sit and listen. Like Job's friends sat just for 7 days. They just sat with him. And they just were there so he didn't feel alone. So that, like I said, you know, you'd be like, okay, these are good friends. Unfortunately, after 7 days, they had kind of had enough of it. And they had 7 days to think about all that had happened to Job while they're sitting there in silence. Their minds must have been racing. Job starts to say, like, I wish I'd never been born. This is so terrible. I wish I had just never existed. Why did God even put me on this earth? I wish I had never been born. And so again, they kind of start off with this, we'll skip that. They kind of start off with this great response. Then Eliphaz says, oh, come on, if someone ventured a word with you, would you be impatient? No, he wouldn't. He's like, but would you keep from speaking? Think about all that you have instructed many, how you've strengthened feeble minds. Your words have supported those who have stumbled. You have strengthened faltering knees. He's like, he kind of pulls a George Bailey, like It's a Wonderful Life. Like when George Bailey's like, I wish I'd never been born. And he's kind of like the angel, that he's like showing George, like, you've done great work, Joe. You've helped so many people. You've done so much good. You're a good person who helps people. And we're like, yeah, good job, Eliphaz. And then Eliphaz stops being a good friend. And then the Eliphaz starts saying, I didn't put it all here. It's a long book. But basically, Eliphaz starts thinking like, Job, what did you do to deserve this? Because surely, back in that day, during that time period, and I'd say even today, people have this idea that God does good things for good people and bad things to bad people. And so therefore, something bad has happened to you. You must have done something wrong. And so Eliphaz, all three of the friends, start saying to Job, well, what did you do wrong? You just need to go to God. You need to go to God, Job, and you need to tell him all that you did wrong so that God will forgive you and fix this. Job's like, I didn't do anything wrong. And they're like, yeah, sure you did. You had to have done something wrong because bad things don't happen to good people. Out of their own fear, they start saying, well, good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. So if something bad happened to you, you must be a bad person. Now we, having read the very first chapter of the book, know that Job did nothing wrong. Job didn't do anything to deserve that. God said, look at my awesome kid who does awesome things. He shuns evil. He is good. He loves me. He's a great kid. Job did nothing wrong to deserve the evil that came upon him. Some of us do nothing wrong and still bad things happen. Some of us do things wrong and bad things happen. Bad things happen to people, whether they're good or bad. And that can be hard. And then his friends start blaming him. They start piling it on. If you would just say you're sorry to God, Job, God would fix it. And Job's like, I didn't do anything. And then Job does kind of like, God, you're terrible. And then God comes down. He's like, oh, did you create the world? And he kind of has like a little come to Jesus talk with Job. And then Job, he's like, God, you're good. You're right. But it's hard in those situations to understand why something bad happens to somebody. But the thing we can never do is blame them, try to silver lining it. It is not our job to fix their problem. It is not our job to help them figure out why this bad thing happened to them. That's their job. And maybe nothing bad happened to them. It could just be life. We have an enemy. He's a jerk, right? He's the one that lies and steals and cheats and destroys. So we've got to be sure that when someone is hurting, that we just sit in their cave with them and just say, I'm here. What do you need? And we always say this. I feel like people are really good at the beginning when someone goes through something of being like showing up and bringing them the casseroles and what do you need and let's go out. For like the first couple weeks, people are really good about being there for you. And then life goes on and they kind of go on with their lives. And those of us who are close to somebody need to remember that grieving takes time. You guys, when I had that breakup, I cried every single night for 2 years, every night. And then slowly got to like 5 nights a week. But I would put my happy face on and go on. And when people are grieving, they usually do what I did, is just pull themselves into themselves. So what do we need to do? We don't just say, what can I do to help you? We look, if it's someone who's close to you, what do they need? Do they need food? Did the person did they lose someone and that was the cook? Then bring them food. Take them out to eat. Is laundry piling up? Then offer to do laundry. Head into the store, text them, be like, hey, I'm heading to the store. What can I get for you? Call them and check on them regularly, even after the first 2 weeks. When you're with them, like afterwards, just say, hey, how's that going? Create space. And if they don't want to talk about it, fine. They don't have to talk about it, but they probably think you're tired of hearing about it. Like I stopped talking to my friends about it after the first probably month or so, because I figured they were tired of hearing about it. So if it's someone you're close to, now we don't do this with people we're not like super close friends with, but like someone you're close to, keep checking on them. Like Rex, she keeps visiting people. She does a great job at that, so they don't feel left out or forgotten. We just listen. And we just ask, how is that going, like, really? You know, like, my best friend from high school, I happened to be with her when she found out that her dad passed away. And so we went back home for her dad's funeral, and I was like, okay, her mom was going to have all these people coming to her house, a flood of people coming to her house. What things is she going to need in the house? To have in the house. So I made her a basket and had tissues and snacks, and I even put feminine products in there in case someone happened to visit who might need something like that, who like she didn't have that in the house, you know, like what things might they need? If you know someone is grieving and they kind of pull into themselves, keep checking on them. Even if they say I'm fine, keep saying, what do you need? How can I help you? Hey, let's go out to lunch. Hey, let's go for a walk. Hey, let's have a chat. What are their felt needs? Don't just say, tell me what you need, and then wait for them to tell you, because this, to be real, they're probably not. They're probably not going to tell you. They're probably just going to do it themselves. And so we can be people who help those people along. We are called to be this colony of heaven, this group of people that helps and lifts everybody up in our community, right? And if you're the person grieving, we take heart in knowing that there is a time for everything. There is a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to weep and a time to laugh. There's a time to mourn and there's a time to dance. And so we're going to go through stages of weeping and we're going to go through stages of dancing. And sometimes, like grief can be, I saw this illustration once. It says grief is this ball in a box and there's a pain button. And when there's that first grief, the box is pretty small and so the button gets hit all the time. This ball is moving around in this box and it hits that pain button over and over and over. But as we get further away from the pain doesn't get any smaller, but the box gets bigger. And so there are going to be times when that button gets hit. Holidays, anniversaries, certain situations. You'll be doing great, and then someone will say something that reminds you of that person, and that pain button gets hit. And that's just the way of grieving, and we need to be aware of that. Like, when my two best friends have lost someone significant to them, I put it in my calendar the day of that loss, so that on that day, I can just be like, hey, how are you really? Hey, I'm thinking about you today. I know this is a tough day. Because they're thinking of it. They're probably thinking it's been years. No one wants to hear about it. But to have someone say, hey, I know today's that day. Anything you want to talk about? Could mean all the difference in the world. They might not want to talk about it. But even just knowing that you remembered, that can bring them comfort and make them feel loved and seen. We can also remember that weeping endures for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Whatever hard season you're in right now, this too shall pass. And it doesn't mean that pain goes away forever, but you'll get days where you get more and more reprieves. You can do it. And we can help each other through it by being there, by sitting in it with us. Do not give advice. Do not try to fix it. Don't come in and tell them they should start dating. Don't come in and tell them come in. I've heard of families coming in and just taking all they lose a spouse or something, they come and take all their clothes out for them. Don't do that. They'll do it when they're ready. Don't push it. You can suggest it. You can say, hey, when you get around to doing this, I'm willing to help you. But don't do it for them. You got to let everybody do it in their own time, in their own way. We can help each other through these hard times when we pay attention and we just let them know, I'm here. I'm willing to crawl down in your pit and sit here with you while you cry, and that's fine. And all of God's children said, amen. All right, so I dare you this week to think about a time when you've been grieving. What helped you feel better? Make a list of those things so that you can help others when they're going through it. Ask God, who around me needs me to sit in their pit with them? You can read the book of Job. Good luck. It's hard. And to engage others, invite someone who is grieving out to dinner, or think about their felt need and find one tangible thing that you can do for them. If you have not said yes to Jesus, you can come on down during this song.